Hi, I'm Dwane Brown. Tonight on KPBS Evening Edition, the U.S. now says one American was on the Malaysian jet shot down over Ukraine, and pro-Russian rebels are responsible. Stand Down begins here in San Diego with word of new help for homeless veterans tonight.
And 30 years ago today, the worst mass killing in San Diego's history happened at a McDonald's in San Ysidro. I'm Peggy Pico with a look back and how the shootings have changed police procedure here and nationwide. Also coming up, a conversation with a researcher about her new book, Animal Madness, how animals with mental health disorders can help humans.
The plan to split California 6 ways runs into a problem. Opponents are claiming voter fraud. And in our wild San Diego, we'll meet a lot of things with wings and learn what they mean to our environment. Hi, good evening. Thanks for joining us. The U.S. says pro-Russian separatists shot down a Malaysian passenger plane over Ukraine and is calling for a ceasefire in the region. One American is among the nearly 300 people killed in yesterday's crash. President Obama says U.S. investigators are on the way to the site. He says the incident is an outrage of unspeakable proportions.
This was a global tragedy. An Asian airliner was destroyed in European skies filled with citizens from many countries. So there has to be a credible international investigation into what happened. The UN Security Council has endorsed this investigation, and we will hold all its members, including Russia, to their word.
A European team is already at the crash site, but the separatists are not giving them full access to the area. Next week, Obama will meet with the presidents of Guatemala, Honduras, and El Salvador to talk about the surge of children from those countries at the U.S. border. More than 57,000 children have come north since October. San Diego Congressman Darrell Issa is in Central America tonight for a first-hand look at conditions there. Unemployment was down in California last month, but up in San Diego. The unemployment rate in the county was 6.1%, up slightly from the 5.8% the month before. The state's unemployment rate was 7.4%, the lowest it's been since July 2008. The local arts, entertainment, and recreation industry saw the biggest job gains last month. Another San Diego company is moving to Texas. Omnitrax makes software for the trucking industry. It's owned by a San Francisco investment firm with a history of moving companies out of state, including 2 others from San Diego. Texas is paying nearly $4 million to get Omnitrax. The 27th annual Stand Down is underway, offering a range of services to homeless veterans. This year, it comes with a little extra help for housing. Speak City Heights reporter Megan Burks joins us from the newsroom. Megan, what's being offered to veterans this year?
Pretty much some extra money to help pay rent. San Diego City Council President Todd Gloria and the Housing Commission say the federal government has upped the allotment of its Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing, or VASH, vouchers in San Diego. That means an extra 177 housing vouchers that help veterans afford rent.
And that is good news. The city has an estimated, 3,000 homeless veterans. How much of a difference will these vouchers actually make?
Well, with the new vouchers, there are just less than 800 vouchers available to veterans. They work like Section 8, covering a portion of an individual's rent. The local VA says the chronically homeless and the sick will get preference for the vouchers. I spoke with an Army veteran, George Wilson, who got his voucher in November. He was out of work and living in his car when he came to San Diego from Texas in 2012.
Being in Texas, we don't have things like this. And it was a 9-month waiting list to get into the Patriot House, which is one of the veteran programs there. And so that would have been 9 more months living on the street. San Diego does so much for the veterans.
And Megan, of course, we hear a lot about a shortage of affordable housing here. Will those receiving the voucher have trouble finding a place to rent?
Well, San Diego Housing Commission President Richard Gentry says that shouldn't be an issue at all. Here he is talking at Stand Down today.
Well, the San Diego Housing Commission administers just under 15,000 total vouchers, of which now just under 800 are going to be VASH vouchers. And we have absolutely no problem in getting landlord participation.
And how do vets sign up for the housing voucher?
They can go to their local VA facility to see if they're eligible, or they can talk with many of the social service providers in town.
Speaks City Heights reporter Megan Burks. Governor Jerry Brown signed 2 new gun control laws today. One requires single-shot handguns to meet safety requirements. They had been exempt before. The other bill speeds up notifications when a court bars someone from owning a gun because of a conviction or a mental health problem. Today marks a tragic anniversary in San Diego's history. 30 years ago, James Huberty walked into a San Ysidro McDonald's armed with an Uzi, a shotgun, a handgun, and hundreds of rounds of ammunition. He began shooting indiscriminately. Peggy Pico takes a look back at the worst mass killing in San Diego and how it changed police response across the nation.
At just about 4 p.m. on July 18, 1984, the worst massacre in San Diego's history began at a packed McDonald's in San Ysidro. For the next 78 minutes, James Huberty, a heavily armed and unemployed welder and security guard, shot and killed 21 people, one by one, and injured 19 others. The victims ranged in age from 4 months to 74 years old. The murder rampage ended when a police sniper killed the gunman. Here with a personal look back at the shootings and how it changed the police and the city are 2 journalists who covered the massacre. J.W. August with 10 News and KPBS News editor Mark Sauer. Sad day today in San Diego, remembering this. J.W., you eventually got onto the scene. You were a journalist at this time. How did you hear about it?
I was actually an editor at that time, an assignment editor, and we have the scanners, police scanners on our desk, and I heard the calls coming in. I heard the calls going down. I heard the voice of the dispatchers, which were very high-pitched and anxious. It wasn't this regular radio traffic you hear, and you knew almost immediately it was really bad because they were sending all kinds of units. I recall some snatches of conversation where they're positioning officers across the freeway, that sort of thing. But we knew something bad was happening, but we didn't know what exactly was going on. We rolled all our units that we could roll.
And you got there, and was it still confusion when you got there?
No, it was later in the day. I was off my shift. Everybody was staying in working like you do on a story like this, and I was actually ferrying tapes and batteries down to the camera guys. I didn't get real close, but I did talk to a lot of our photographers when they came back, and it was very disturbing, even for the veterans who've been there a while.
It's still disturbing so many years later. Mark, you covered the aftermath extensively. What stands out in your mind?
Well, I was a newspaper reporter at the San Diego Union that time, and they assigned me to go out and do the story at the medical examiner's office. And even these highly trained forensic pathologists, many years of experience, they were doing autopsy after autopsy, many of them on children, and it got to them, and they sat down and just shared with me the human impact it took. This was above and beyond their jobs, which is a grim job to begin with, but this thing was like nothing they'd ever seen.
It never happened in our country before.
No.
It had never
Yes,
happened.
this was the first for a very long time. And the unusual thing about this was how these people were shot. Didn't come in and spray down the building, point blank, one by one, children, seniors, as we talked about. Now, JW, tell us what details emerged about the shooter, James Huberty.
Well, he had mental issues. I had actually talked to his wife, Edna, a couple days after, and she called into our news desk, and I happened to pick up the phone, and we began a conversation which went on for a couple, 3 days. She was trying to explain that her husband was having issues. We tried to deal with it. Nobody paid attention, that sort of stuff.
And Mark, ultimately, I know that a police sniper had killed Huberty. What was SWAT like back then, and how does it compare to how this changed things and it is now?
Right, it was different back then. You had officers who'd been trained beyond their patrol duties. They had their equipment in the trunk of the patrol cars, but nothing like the separate unit and the high efficiency and the high training that they have these days. In fact, this event changed things. They realized they had to have a dedicated SWAT unit that San Diego, remember, was about a third of the size it is today. Suddenly an event like this tells you you're a big city, nasty, nasty things can happen. We've got to change the way we do things in the police department. It really was a wake-up call.
And it did. It changed it here and also throughout the nation. Other people looked at this and followed suit. Now, I know at first McDonald's tried to refurbish the restaurant and failed. I understand there were some protests going on about that. What happened after they ultimately decided not to refurbish the restaurant and reopen it?
Well, they tore it down. I saw part of that myself. Before the teardown, we had gotten a tip the night or the next night after the murders, that the crane companies have been hired. So, and we knew they were going to arrive early in the morning, so we went over there with a crew and watched, because we thought they were going to take the McDonald's sign down. But what they did is we were pulling out the children's playthings. And of all the things, from all the things I saw from there, that's the one image I can see. The sun's going up, the slides.
And
the symbols of childhood, yeah, it was so sad.
Devastating.
It still bothers me.
And yeah, absolutely. I guess, Mark, the impact that this had, I see the impact it had on both of you as journalists, but on the city. I understand there's a memorial there. What's happened since then? Yeah,
it was bulldozed down just a few months later. It wound up being part of Southwestern College, which it is, and there is a memorial there. And of course, we're at the 30th anniversary, and that's when people tend to think about it, on these landmark anniversaries and all. And many people in San Diego, whole generations come up that doesn't know about this tragedy. And it was just a terrible, senseless day. And we see so many shootings now, and maybe we're numb to them to some degree, but this was so shocking at the time.
All right, well, still very disturbing. J.W. August, Mark Sauer, thank you very much for your personal insight into this.
The state controller's primary race is finally final today. Democrat John Perez called off the week-old recount after picking up just a handful of votes. Perez lost to fellow Democrat Betty Yee by less than 500 votes. She will go on to face Republican Ashley Swearingen in November. Opponents of the Six Californias movement have filed a fraud complaint. They say voters who signed petitions to put the idea on the ballot were misled by signature gatherers. The complaint says some folks were told the measure would keep the state from breaking up instead of splitting it 6 ways. Backers of the plan say their petition drive was legal and fair. The Secretary of State is now verifying signatures to see if the proposal makes it on the 2016 ballot. San Diego County is on track to break the recent record for whooping cough cases. There have been 895 cases identified in the county this year, and the record was set in 2010. That was 1,100 reported cases. The county public health officer says county and state are experiencing an epidemic of the disease. Of course, you can find information about whooping cough and vaccine clinics at sdiz.org. California is getting $9.7 million in new emergency drought aid. The U.S. Agricultural Secretary announced the funding during a visit to Central California today, where he met with rural homeowners. The money will help secure water supplies for 11 counties, but Tom Vilsack says his department has no more money to give unless Congress passes drought assistance bills. With more than 80% of the state suffering from drought, state fire officials say they are keeping a watchful eye because conditions are ripe for more wildfires.
We're well ahead of schedule with our what we call our fuels drying out. So all the grasses and the trees are struggling in these drought conditions. And not having the wind has definitely helped with some fires. Unfortunately, we have had a couple of wind events that have pushed fires down in Southern California. And, you know, of course, Santa Ana has come in more towards the fall, and that is another great concern for us coming up the next few months.
The latest brush fire, called the Bully Fire in Shasta County, has burned 11,000 acres and is about 50% contained tonight. That little bit of rain we had in some parts of the county earlier this week was enough to create apparently sewage runoff into the Tijuana estuary, closing part of the South County shoreline to swimmers. Health officials say it will stay in effect until water samples come up clean. We're told the closure will not affect the Sun and Sea Festival. That's underway in Imperial Beach right now.
I'm Gwen Eiffel on the next News Hour. A look at political polarization in America on the ground in Wisconsin. That's Friday on the PBS News Hour.
What can we learn from animals diagnosed with PTSD or other mental disorders? Earlier, Peggy Pico talked with a scientist whose new book aims to answer that question.
A large and growing body of research supports the idea that animals have the capacity to be self-aware, express emotions, and suffer from mental disorders like anxiety, self-destructive behaviors, and unhappiness, just like their human counterparts. How this knowledge could help us and them is the subject of a new book, Animal Madness: How Anxious Dogs, Compulsive Parrots, and Elephants in Recovery Help Us Understand Ourselves. Written by my guest, researcher and historian Laurel Braitman. Welcome.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Now, Laura, you've said your book and your career, Laurel, your book and your career actually were ultimately inspired by your dog, Oliver. What was he like?
Oh, he was wonderful and captivating and the most beautiful dog I've ever seen, and he was also completely crazy. He had debilitating separation anxiety. We couldn't leave him alone, or he would destroy himself or our apartment. He hallucinated. He had a high prey drive. He had a canine compulsive disorder. Really, he had all manner of problems.
And speaking of this, some people might say that this is anthropomorphism. Did he really have these disorders? And in defining anthropomorphism, projecting human perspective or characteristics on animals are objective. How can you tell if an animal disorder like Oliver's, it's not just, you know, humans attributing their idea of what's happening onto the animal?
Well, I actually think it is humans' idea of what's happening, and that's fine. I think that we can't not anthropomorphize. In fact, you know, you can't really take your brain out of your human head and put it in a jar and then think about another animal thinking. So we'll always be one animal wondering about the experience of another. And when it comes to understanding your pets, actually you projecting your own anxiety or fear or what emotional state onto them and trying to understand what they're experiencing actually will help you help them. So I'm really pro anthropomorphism as long as it's done critically, because I think that actually no one is better than you when it comes to understanding your pet.
How could you help them? Let's just go with that. So by you saying, let's say my dog had this anxiety, how would that benefit you helping your pet?
Oh, well, first of all, once you recognize that they're suffering, then you can figure out what it is that their triggers are. And every dog is different, just like every person's anxiety. So in my case, my dog's anxiety was all about being left alone. He was a rescue. And so anytime we left the house, he really believed that he was going to be alone forever. And sometimes he would just devolve into the worst sort of panicked version of himself. And once he even jumped out of our house, and we lived on the 3rd floor of a brownstone. So that was traumatic and terrible. But to help him, we did all kinds of things that you would actually use to help a person, frankly, from psychopharmaceuticals to behavior therapy, trying to decouple the things that stressed him out, like getting our keys from leaving.
Things that would trigger it. What about the reverse? How does understanding an animal's mental health disorders help us understand and treat disorders in humans?
Well, what I discovered is that really almost everything that we know about the unhinged human mind, we learned from watching other animals first and from using them as proxies in efforts to understand human mental illness. So everything from how we treat infants who are institutionalized, we learned from rhesus monkeys in Wisconsin in the 50s and 60s. You know, baby monkeys need more than just food and shelter to do well. Even if they're kept clean and quote-unquote healthy, they actually need affection. And so a lot of these studies went on to inform how we treated human infants inside institutions, so hospitals and orphanages. Everything from that to say, you know, our psychopharmaceutical arsenal, Valium, Xanax, all of that came from other animals.
I know your book talks about these liver-flavored doggy Prozac, and I think the SeaWorld orcas being given Xanax to deal with separation from their calves.
Yes.
What do you think about animal pharmaceuticals? Do you think they're being overused, appropriately used, more research?
You know, I think it's a conundrum, frankly, and it parallels a conundrum in human therapy, which is that the drugs can be deployed ethically or not. And if you don't fix the root troubles of the animal suffering, you know, there's no way in the world that a orca mother should be separated from her calf. And giving her Xanax to deal with that, I think, is not the same as giving Xanax to a dog who is suffering from severe thunderstorm anxiety to the point where he will destroy himself or chew through a wooden door. You know, in one case, the drugs are empathetic, and in the other, they're a Band-Aid for a situation that shouldn't exist.
Speaking of thunderstorms, give us a few tips on how to calm a pet. Do those lavender-infused pet treats actually work?
One thing that you can do to calm an anxious dog, particularly during a thunderstorm, is the prevailing knowledge is that you shouldn't comfort a dog when they're stressed. And actually, a lot of recent research shows that that's silly, that you should feel free to calm and comfort your dog when they're stressed out. You're not reinforcing that behavior. So feel free to comfort your pets when they're stressed out.
Tip. All right, Laurel Braitman, author of the book Animal Madness, thanks for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Mark Sauer. There's cheers and jeers for the hike in the city's minimum wage. A wealthy entrepreneur says one California is dysfunctional, so let's add 5 more. San Diego's finally facing up to its water problem. And it's the 40th anniversary of LGBT Pride. Join me tonight at 8:30 for the KPBS Roundtable.
There's a new mural going up in East Village near downtown to honor number 19.
We did his nickname, Mr. Padre, and then we have a portrait of him on the right.
The mural celebrates the life of Padres legend Tony Gwynn, who died last month. Artist Saratoga Sake says he was inspired by paintings done in other cities honoring their icons. He says he thought San Diego needed one for Gwynn.
That's what I think is so important, to have a huge, a mural with his name or, his likeness around San Diego. Not just baseball fans loved, but everyday people are attracted to.
The mural will be unveiled tomorrow, the 32nd anniversary of Gwynn's debut with the Padres. It's on the side of the undisputed gym at 16th and K Streets downtown. Well, we are headed outdoors now to learn more about plants and animals found in our own backyard in tonight's segment of Our Wild San Diego.
So today we're going to talk about water conservation. We're going to talk a little bit about native pollinators and habitats.
Butterflies and bees.
Butterflies and bees, the birds and the bees.
And
then we're going to talk a little bit about Mariah and how does this bird play into our native habitats. But I really want to introduce you to somebody special.
Yeah, bring her in.
Come on over here, Miss Smarty Plants.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah?
And you get a wing flap just
Hey,
because.
San Diego.
Well, let's go on and check out the Water Conservation Garden.
You bet.
Let me tell you
about
the birds and the bees and the flowers and the trees and the moon up above.
See these black dots on the lower set of wings?
Yeah.
Those are actually glands, and that denotes it as the male.
Beautiful.
So that butterfly just emerged out of that chrysalis, and its wings are wet, so it needs to hang there for a couple of hours for its wings to dry out, because butterflies are cold-blooded. So they can't move without heat and wet wings, and you notice how it's tucked in underneath those wings. It's so that it doesn't become a predator to birds. So it's hidden in there. That's why they lay their chrysalis. You don't see them very often because they try and hide them. These bats, birds, bees are all pollinators. So we have a little connection with Mariah, who we saw earlier, as part of this whole ecosystem that butterflies play a huge part in.
Right, and it all comes back to our own food supply, right? These pollinators.
Absolutely. I will tell you this, we wouldn't have as much corn if we didn't have butterflies. They're one of the big pollinators of corn and a lot of other things. So the beauty that you see has a deeper message of importance as well, because they have a specific place in this ecosystem, and they are one of the reasons why it's successful.
So this is Mariah, the kestrel falcon. Whoa.
The American kestrel falcon, and she, as we've been talking about healthy habitats and water conservation for our wildlife here, she is a perfect solution to insects in the garden. I'm very, very happy to see these guys when they're around, because she likes to eat crickets and ladybugs, well, not necessarily ladybugs, but all sorts of different types of insects to keep our habitats really healthy.
And this bird obviously is also native.
Yeah, she's native to San Diego. They do like to eat rodents, but she loves, as you just saw, crickets and other small insects like that. And they're pretty much opportunistic. They'll eat whatever they can get their little talons on, and bugs in gardens are an easy target.
So, Ms. Smarty Plants, you've brought us into the actual conservation garden.
Yes, welcome to our retrofit house. This is probably our signature exhibit and the reason why the garden was established.
Yeah, back in the late 1990s when we had our other big drought here in California.
Yes, we're having almost the exact type of situation. We're going to be going into some mandatory water restrictions, a level 2 drought. And this demonstrates for you the proper use of drought-tolerant plants, drip irrigation system, the proper use of mulch, and the amazing part is, over to my left, you'll see a typical backyard here in San Diego.
Well, come and show us.
One of the beauties is that this type of planting and irrigation, drip irrigation, will save you 40% of your outdoor water bill.
Wow.
So that's a wonderful tip. Another one is to cut down those showers. Even if we cut them down by 5 minutes, you can save about 20 gallons per person a day. So 3 million people in San Diego, times 20 gallons, 60 million a day.
Right. And of course, all of this brings us back around to conservation and preservation of our wild San Diego, right?
Well, our wild San Diego, you're seeing it, you're living it, because what we're doing is we're creating a healthy habitat, a sustainable habitat for our wildlife. And I'd like to just take a minute and thank Mariah and Sherry from the Living Coast Discovery Center for the efforts that they do in keeping our San Diego wild.
Absolutely. The Water Conservation Garden is open daily from 9 to 4. It's in El Cajon, right next door to Cuyamaca College. Warmer temperatures are in store for much of the county this weekend. Along the coast, look for the low to mid 70s after the morning clouds clear back. Lots of sunshine, even along at the beaches. Inland valleys, upper 70s to low 80s through Monday. We might even see a stray shower, possibility of a thunderstorm tomorrow afternoon. Mountain temperatures will also be in the upper 70s to low 80s. You see plenty of sun. As for the deserts, no change. Super hot, triple digits all through the weekend. You can find tonight's stories on our website, kpbs.org/evening edition. Thanks for joining us. You have a great weekend.